Man, Luna Vachon was a badass.
Yes, this is Luna.
Women, they were an extra added incentive for somebody to go to the show.
You weren't treated at all as equal.
Luna really broke the mold.
From this day forth, I will haunt your very breath.
Women could do anything. We could do anything.
She loved wrestling, and that's all she wanted to be.
I told my parents that I was going to be the WWF Women's Champion someday.
She knew the business. Everybody got like a decent payday for the first time ever.
We were our characters, and I stopped seeing that there was a difference.
Art imitates life. Nice mom into this crazy lunatic.
All of the women were scared of her.
She liked to party too much.
She hit my front porch with a car. Came in, she had to go.
She had a dream. I know what that's about, and she followed her heart.
You can't quit when you're 2 feet from your goal.
When she came out at WrestleMania, I was so proud of her.
If Luna were here, she would look right in your face and go, I made these women a place. I gave them a place, and you gave me nothing. Luna needed somebody to give a about her.
Associate producer of the film Lunatic, the Luna Vachon story, Greg Oliver's back. How are you, sir?
I'm great. I'm looking forward to everybody finally getting a chance to see this movie. On those in Canada, at least, I'll have a good chance.
I remember the Dark Side of the Ring episode that came out, I think it was a couple seasons ago now, on Luna Vachon. And it was actually a pretty sympathetic story, all things considered. But how would you defer this film from what we may have seen with Dark Side of the Ring, first of all?
Well, it does. It goes into the darkness for sure. You can't tell the Luna Vachon story without the darkness, but it's also not as sensationalized as a lot of the Dark Side of the Rings have to be, because they really want to capture you and capture that non-viewer. It also tries to really explain a lot better how she got to where she was, both with the family and how messed it up it was, but also the struggles on the road and what being bipolar actually means and how difficult that is to do in the wrestling business, especially when you have to be out there and be so extroverted. So there's those kind of things I think that add a lot more depth to her than we got in the Dark Side of the Ring episode, even though there are a lot of overlap and certainly some of the talking heads are very similar. But we went out of our way to get some new people, and I found it to be quite an exciting, fun process to be a part of.
So like a lot of fans my age, mostly became familiar with Luna Vachon, at least here in Western Canada, through her time in WWF. The whole feud with, first of all, Medusa, and then, of course, the Bam Bam Bigelow's main squeeze and all these other bizarre things. But she really got her start quite early in the game before that, didn't she?
Absolutely. She went to see Fabulous Moolah. I think she was about 16. She definitely wasn't of age to do it, but started learning to wrestle and then stopped and took a little break and popped out a couple of kids and ended up back there again. It's the very familiar story where she's at ringside in Florida with Kevin Sullivan's Army of Darkness and ends up involved in all them and becomes an acolyte of his. And that's her real entry to the business, where people saw her and then she stuck around. But she'd actually been involved in the wrestling business before that, learning to wrestle. And then, of course, prior to that, around her stepfather, Paul the Butcher Vachon, and all the rest of the crazy Vachon family.
So when the idea for this film comes up, I guess, between you and Kate, how did this communication begin, and who really wanted to spawn this idea?
So Kate reached out to me out of the blue. I did not know her, other than we'd done a story on her wrestling persona, Calamity Kate, on Slam Wrestling a couple of years prior. I had done a story on Slam about 10 years since Luna was gone. I shared some of my personal memories of her. I think I posted a picture of my first book I did, the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, The Canadians, where she took a red Sharpie and wrote right across 2 pages of the Vachon entry that we put the fun in dysfunctional. And it's just, what a great memory. And that was it wasn't the only time I met her, but that was the one time that it really made an impression on me. And we got to hang out and just chat. And she was wrestling Malaya Hosaka that night. things I remember, because I don't always remember a lot of wrestling stuff, but that one sticks with me. So Kate had read that article and said that she always wanted to do a documentary about Luna Vachon. This was before The Dark Side of the Ring came out. So she hired me as an associate producer, and I quickly learned that Kate was incredibly talented. She'd done all kinds of work on her own, but also had been a hired gun. And during the process, I got to see her go off and do what it's like the farm life love thing that they did on CBC or whatever it was.
Right.
Maybe not my kind of thing. But the ability to jump around and do those kind of things was truly impressive to learn from afar. But the funny thing is, it turns out I knew her husband. And Steve Svedovich is the brother of Sin Bodhi. He wrestles as Cobra Kai. I knew Steve here in Toronto. So it's just kind of this funny full circle kind of thing. And during the process of doing all this, Kate and Steve had a kid named Van. So I was able to send them one of my kids' books that I did. So it's just this crazy wrestling world that we end up wrapped up in. It was nice to make new friends. And that's essentially what it was. Kate became a friend. She ended up using some of the same people that I'd worked on with the Sweet Daddy Siki documentary here in Toronto, including the distributor. So I knew some of them. So yes, it's all a great convoluted story, but
it's funny how it all ties together, right? It's kind of like music and media too, right? Where and comedy too, like everything just intersects with everything you find after a while, and you just realize, oh, this person, and then even some wrestling connections are tying into some of the music now, and that's kind of a neat way to meet someone, and obviously you get to tell the story of Luna Vachon again in a very different way. Like you said, you're not focusing so much on the controversy as much as dealing with life and the way that Luna did.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I think going into it, Kate has a different feel for dealing with people. Being a woman is probably different being a director than being a man. Obviously, I can't compare it that, but I think she got different stuff out of particularly Van Herd, right? Who's the son of Luna Vachon. And he took Kate down and showed where the ashes were and things like that weren't on the Dark Side episode. Doesn't mean they didn't film it. They didn't use it if they did. So things like that. I just think she brings a real sympathy and a real listening persona, I guess. I don't know. It's a director doing a documentary, so you have to listen a little bit. You shouldn't have the idea in your head how it's going to end, because you're a documentarian, right? You got to listen to it. You got to find out where that story's going. And Kate, to her credit, and she would listen to me. She would listen to other people, say, well, we can't say this. We need more of this. And we'd try to find the right people to do that. And I know I was a conduit to finding a lot of the people, but certainly Kate worked her butt off doing all that. And then as associate producer this time, which I wasn't on the Sweet Daddy Siki doc and even the Iron Sheet documentary, which I helped with a bit, I got to see a lot more how the nuts and bolts are made. I got to do a little bit of voiceover. By now, I'm used to the idea that I'm the historian and you're used to move the story along and to give little tidbits about how society and how wrestling worked at that time. And I'm happy to do that. But even to go do voiceover work, I'd never done that before. So I really cherish the chance to get to do some of these things.
Well, geez, Greg, if you ever want to just come tell stories, you're always welcome. If something pops in your head, just give me a call. But in all seriousness, going back to Luna Vachon's story here, again, LUNATIC, the Luna Vachon story, going to be available on Canadian TV, Hollywood Suite. When you look back at all the people that were talked to in this and all the people that you helped connect Kate with and all the stories that come out of this, there still has to be things that surprise you because you know a lot about a lot of wrestlers, but was there anything that really stood out? And, if it's something that spoils the film, please don't do that because I'd rather discover that for myself. But was there maybe a tentpole moment for you in this story that maybe you didn't realize or you hadn't heard before in such a way?
I'm not sure I can think of something like that off the top of my head. I appreciate that Kate went out to a couple of different people, like Aubrey Edwards is in the film, the AEW referee, because she's also bipolar. So it's a different way to bring in that story and somebody I would never have thought of. Whereas having Penelope Paradise in there as one of Luna's best friends at the time was essential. Sometimes things happen from beyond the grave too. So Howard Brody is a key part of the history of wrestling in many ways, right? And he ran a women's promotion out of Florida with a guy named Craig Cohen. Craig Cohen's interviewed in the film, but Howard died a few years ago. However, we were in Vegas doing some filming at the Cauliflower Alley Club, and Howard's funeral happened to be that same time. Another promoter slash journalist named Carmen DeSpirito went to the funeral, realized they had the tapes from that women's wrestling promotion there at the funeral and a whole bunch of posters and all these kind of things. He knew I was working on the documentary and that I was at the Cauliflower Alley Club, and he brought it back to me. That's Howard working from beyond, I think, that he wanted to see the story made because Luna was one of his dearest and most cherished friends. And Howard was a great friend of mine. He had a lot of detractors, and I understand why. But, I love the way that things come together like that. And you can't always predict, but the film's a lot richer for finding some of that footage.
Well, now we switch from producer to writer, director, and conceiver of this idea. Kate Kroll, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about this film. You've invited me to watch it, which I can't wait to do, along with a lot of folks that are going to get the chance to on HollywoodSuite.ca for on demand, or you can even check your packages, see if you have Hollywood Suite. But this is it. I know you've been to a few film festivals, but your baby is going out to the world officially now. How you feeling?
I feel good. I feel great. Yeah, I was so nervous making this film, thinking like what are people going to enjoy it? Is anyone going to want to watch it? And so far, the feedback I've gotten has been incredible. So it feels good. Everyone who watches it seems to really like it.
We've talked to Greg a little bit about her story. We talked a lot about what some fans may only have as a source material for A Life of Luna Vachon, and that was the Dark Side of the Ring episode that came out a while back. He took great pride in watching this film and saying that what you've managed to create here isn't as sensationalistic. It's not a pretty paintbrush over her life either. Like, you get very raw and real about it. But I guess for me personally, the question I always have to ask you is, what made you decide, you know what, we got to tell Luna's story and we'd like to do it this way?
Yeah, so I actually started developing this documentary in 2019, like literally right before the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And then I took the opportunity during the pandemic to really write a treatment and start doing pre-interviews over Zoom with people and apply for funding. And so it took a little while to get the funding together. I am a wrestler myself, and I have a wrestling promotion called WrestleCore with my husband, Cobra Kai. And I really wanted to see one of my heroes on screen, or I wanted to see a woman that I could look up to on screen. And I thought, who could that be? And the answer was simple. It had to be Luna. And at that time, when I decided to do this documentary, there was no Dark Side of the Ring on Luna. There was no other documentary. There really wasn't a lot about Luna in terms of a film. I wanted to tell her story to wrestling fans, but also non-wrestling fans, because she comes from a legendary Canadian wrestling family. So she's an unsung Canadian hero in a lot of ways.
At first, when I saw the poster art and I started reading the synopsis, I was like, uh-oh, is this going to be kind of a hit job? And it turns out to be exactly the opposite. It's, again, like I said, it seems to be a story with a lot of heart, a lot of, like you said, inspiration behind it. And you kind of gave me the spoiler here early, but that's okay, because I do want to talk about you as a wrestler as well. And when you go through the process and the work and the research and grants or production or whatever happens throughout this entire thing, how much of this is consuming your life on top of what you do as an entertainer?
Yeah, well, I started working in the film industry 20 years ago. So I was a filmmaker before I was a wrestler. So Perfect. It kind of was natural for me to, when I really got into wrestling, to be like, okay, let's marry my two passions together in this film. but it's a lot of work. It was so much work. I'm tired. I had a baby in the middle of making this movie. So I'm extra tired. He's 4 now. Oh my God. But yeah, so it was a lot of work. It was a long journey, but the crazy thing is that it felt like Luna wanted this film made, or Luna was there with me while I was making it, because just the way everything came together so smoothly, all the pieces came in place, all the funding came together. And then if you watch the film, she was there. She was there when I was filming the interviews, and you'll see a little bit of that in the movie. She was talking to us.
I love it. That draws me in even more. You mentioned how when you first started developing this, the Dark Side of the Ring episode didn't exist. And you're right, there weren't a lot of stories about a Luna Vachon out there. In fact, the only recollection I have of hearing about Luna Vachon at all, other than the sporadic indie appearance here or there, or, maybe she, and I'm talking way back to when she made her final WCW run, after the WWF and all this, was a WWF or E magazine article that showed a picture of her in her tow truck driving outfit. Mm-hmm. And she was running a business, and they're painting this rosy picture of, hey, Luna Vachon's doing great. She's happy doing this. And, it's just one of those kind of puff pieces. And then you find out later just how much of her life was, I don't want to say negative, but it was definitely, it wasn't all sunshine, roses, and tow trucks.
Yeah, I mean, like her son says in the film, it must have been hard going from, WrestleMania with Shawn Michaels to driving a tow truck. And when you have to walk away from wrestling, it's you can't just be a little bit in it, right? Mm-hmm. You have to just leave it behind. Otherwise, it's just too hard. And so, she didn't have fans screaming for her. She wasn't special. I think that probably was really difficult for her. And
wrestlers, after they finish, it's not like today where you have all these conventions and all these signings and stuff like that. There was no after wrestling industry. There was no way to connect with fans anymore, really, either. And I'm sure that had to play a part when you step away from that spotlight. I assume, again, I've never been in that big of a spotlight, but I even know in my business, right, in radio, you get off the air, if, you suffer a cut or you leave for whatever reason, you got that lull in between and it kills you. I can only imagine what it's like for that. And I'm sure a lot of the stories you heard probably reiterated that message as well.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that I think towards the very end, she started getting clean again. And it was that one, that relapse she had, that her, once you clean your system and then you try doing the same amount of drugs maybe that you're used to before, it's like a shock to your body. So it's interesting that she did get clean for a while right before she passed away. So it couldn't have been easy for her.
You talk about how her as a wrestler inspired you, and I'm so glad that you got to talk to Deborah Miceli, especially because, I mean, for a lot of us fans here in North America, especially, that's probably the most prominent feud we saw her with was with Alundra Blaze and then Medusa for a little bit in WCW there, but there was so much groundbreaking performance in what she did. Women wrestlers weren't doing what her and Deborah did and what really Luna went out to do. I mean, you even have the clip of the Sensational Sherry match where they're literally almost killing each other. And it really is, for lack of a better term, revolutionary. And that to me is a term that seems to be used a lot in women's wrestling throughout the decades now. But I remember seeing those two go, and I'm watching as a kid going, this is something special. So when you saw her as a wrestler, I mean, the messaging for women who want to be wrestlers versus guys who want to be wrestlers, you couldn't be more polar opposite for the longest time. It seemed to be, it's like, you got to be a model, you got to be a this, you got to, you don't have to worry about the wrestling, you just got to look good for the girls, whereas for the guys, it's like, you got to be this, you got to be that, and then there was technical wrestlers and body guys and da-da-da. But is it fair to credit Luna maybe more than she gets with giving women wrestlers an opportunity to be more than just the eye candy on the show?
Yeah, I think Luna was very much ahead of her time. And I would love to see if Luna was Luna right now, like I would love to see what she would have done. I think we would have, seen a lot more from her, and she would have gotten bigger opportunities. But yeah, Luna, she always said, if you're going to be mean, be the meanest. If you're going to be ugly, be the ugliest. And she was scary. She didn't fit into that like Barbie mold. And that's, I think that's why we're still talking about her today, because she wasn't afraid to be something else, to commit to her character, which was a scary, badass woman. And she pushed it. Like, she pushed it 100%. She didn't just have her toe in, she was all in on it. And that's really inspiring to me. I mean, when I was growing up watching wrestling, it was the Attitude Era. Mm-hmm. So then when I was older and I actually started training, I still had this idea in my mind that I could never be in WWE because I didn't have huge boobs and blonde hair. Like, I had this Sable or Sunny image in my head of like I can't, no one would ever want to watch me wrestle because I don't look like that. And then just to see like what's happening right now with the women, and there's like different, types of body representation. And like, I think of like, Nia Jax, like I think of her, and then there's Charlotte Flair, right? Like, there's like all this like spectrum of types of women now wrestling. Ruby Rose, and like it's really cool to see. And then like AEW trans wrestlers, and yeah, it's really amazing. And I always wonder, like, what would life be like for Luna if she was born 20 years later?
I could just imagine this, like, or even if she was present day, just having this like sick stable of just these crazy aggressive women, right? That would just go out and tear things up. Almost what they're trying to do with the Wyatt Six, only just make it all women and just have them just go out and destroy. Like, that would be so much fun. Mm-hmm. You were making movies, making films before you got into wrestling. You come back to it. Like you said, you had a baby in between, so you decided, hey, I'm going to make a film. I still have too much money and sleep, so let's have a baby. Was there anything different about making this film for you than there was maybe on anything you've ever worked on before?
I mean, I think for me, the biggest thing about making this film was it is a film about wrestling, and I'm part of the wrestling community. So I was nervous because I was like, oh, if this goes bad, then I'm going to get a lot of heat. You know what I mean? I wasn't like an outsider looking in, right? So there was that. But I don't know. I think it's just really, Luna's story is so beautiful and heartbreaking and inspiring and tragic. So there were a lot of emotions happening when I was making this movie, but I wanted to really make sure that we weren't sensationalizing Luna. We weren't sensationalizing her story, and that we told it with respect and dignity, but with truth.
Sometimes that's the most important message you can get out, is taking a personal bias out of it almost, if that makes sense, and trying to be true to the story. So kudos for having that mentality, because there's a lot of people that would take the temptation to do the exact opposite. And I'm sure you've seen that in your life as well, and in your career, but it's amazing. I'm just pulling up the EPK here because I wanted to go through the special thanks credits as I read them. Yeah, because there's just so many names on here that you've talked to. I mean, we talked about Deborah Maselli Medusa already. Her husband at one time, Gangrel, and David Heath. Names like Bambi Hall and Greg Oliver, of course, who we've just talked to here. Kevin Sullivan, you had in on this.
Yeah, I love him.
Missy Hyatt, who was around the same era. I mean, you couldn't talk more of a polar opposite character at the time when they were running than Missy Hyatt and Luna Vachon.
Yeah.
And so many more here. I mean, it just seems like, was there anybody you hope to talk to that you couldn't get in here, that maybe timing didn't work out or whatever, that you feel you missed, or do you feel pretty happy with the list you got here?
Oh, I think the list I have is spectacular. I was supposed to interview Howard Baum. Sorry. Yeah, I was supposed to interview Howard. I was going to interview him at the Cauliflower Alley Club in Vegas, and then he passed away, and that was really sad. He was one of the owners of Wild Women of Wrestling, which you'll see in the film was like a really important part of Luna's career and life. And then I was talking with Mark Marrow. I really wanted to interview Mark because I thought he could really talk about the whole Sable Luna feud, and as well as just Luna's time at WWE, because she was there twice, right? So that was her second run at WWE. But he said yes to an interview, then he completely ghosted me.
Oh.
I don't know if it has to do with me saying I wanted to interview someone to say nice things about Sable. That's why. I don't think that's why, but I did. That was the one thing I would have loved to have interviewed Sable, and I personally really liked Sable. I think she was amazing. I really do. I think she did a really good job. She did the job she was there to do.
Yeah.
And I think she was a good showman, and I don't know. I would have loved to have interview her and get her side of the story, because we never get that.
Yeah, that might be a tough one. I mean, it's funny. I was doing radio in Regina for a bit when her and Brock moved close to the area, and I'd always people would call me, because they know I'm a giant wrestling nerd. People would be calling my radio show all the time. I just saw Brock Lesnar at Boston Pizza, and then I would find out we were at the same concerts sometimes, because he's a country music fan. I work in country radio, and they would go to shows that were, at venues that I would be hosting at or whatever, and we always just missed each other. So I don't know if you ever want to track her down, maybe take a trip to southern Saskatchewan.
Well, I almost, because I know the town that they supposedly live in, and I almost flew there, and I was gonna just stalk, I was gonna stalk the town and try and find her, but I had a baby, and I was like, I ain't got time for that. But maybe one day, maybe we can tell the true Sable story from her point of view. Sable, if you're listening, call me.
That would be very interesting. So maybe something comes out of this. Maybe this interview is used as evidence. I don't know. But Kate, thank you for making the time for us here. Again, the film Lunatic, the Luna Vachon story. You want to get on this thing. It's something that, even if there's a subscription cost, I would pay it to watch this thing here, because I think you've, more importantly, told a story that, you're right, is absolutely missing from the history of not just women's wrestling, not just Canadian pro wrestling, but I feel really set a chapter in motion before anything else did in North America for women and wrestling today. And I think she deserves a lot more credit. Despite what may or may not have happened that was good or bad in her life, the impact of her work is what we have to measure her by in some ways the most here as wrestling fans. And you humanizing her story, I think, is going to go a long way to doing that. So thank you for sharing her story and sharing some of yours with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah. And like you said, it's airing on Hollywood Suite starting December 16th, or you can go on Hollywood Suite on demand. It's the subscription fee is really small, and you could always subscribe, watch it, and then unsubscribe if you want. If you really want. But you should stay subscribed. But and then we're trying to figuring out where it's going to screen in the U.S. So if anyone from the U.S. is listening, hopefully it'll be there soon.
we actually do have a pretty strong American contingency out there. So you know what? I know a few of you that are even in programming out there. If you know someone who knows someone, let's find a home for this thing. But again, Kate, thank you so much. And by the way, if you want to see some of Kate's wrestling career of her own, Calamity Kate is who we can search. And just see your entire career. And you know what? Let's have you on again when this whole thing settles down here, and we'll have you back on to talk about yourself and maybe other interesting things that come up in your life in wrestling. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. Thank you so much.